Here is a very simple application. It takes an input, click a button, checks for a valid value. We are going to use the AI assistant built into Google Chrome to write code to automate that and help us explore the input values for testing. Can it do it? Yes, it can. So let's find out how. Now, this is something I know how to do myself. I can write JavaScript code that will type in values in here, click buttons, call the functionality, check the output value. Here's a simple code to do something similar. And this code took me about half an hour to write. It covers a whole bunch of data going in and checks the value. The question is, can we get AI to help us do that? Now, I know the answer is yes, so we're going to go through the exercise to do that. But this is a valid approach for helping you test web applications. You don't have to just do web application testing from the outside, automating the browser. You can automate by manipulating the DOM through JavaScript in the JavaScript console. I've got a free course on Test Automation U that covers this, some bunch of blog posts on my site. There's a free ebook, but we're going to see, can the AI help us do this? So in Google, there's in the dev tools. In fact, let me start completely from scratch so you can see everything. Refresh the page. No inputs. I'm going to right click and do inspect to get the dev tools up. The AI assistant is going to be part of the toolbar. Mine's come down the bottom here. And when you click on it, it will say you need to enable it. Once you've enabled it, you then have a chat interface. And it's basically supposed to be a HTML and JavaScript debugger. So I can say, inspect this, ask a question. What is this element? It's an HTML input element with type attribute set to button. This makes it render as a clickable button. So I can learn how the page is working. That's essentially what this AI is for. So we're going to misuse it and get it to automate this application. So I'm going to start very simple and say, create code that will run in the JavaScript console to enter the string A, B, B, well, let's do capital B, B, C, C, D. That's a 7-character string. Should be valid because it meets those rules. Into the input field named characters, then click the input button with value check input and validate that the value shown in the input field named validation message is valid value. Let's see what it does. So this should be creating code that will just type a single value in, click the button and check the output. So now it's saying, here's the code I'm going to run. Are you sure you want to do this? Because executing code in the JavaScript console can be dangerous because it might do something. I'm just going to say yes, because it's a test application. It doesn't matter what happens. It can't really do anything wrong. And I'll quickly scan through the code. It's finding the basic fields. It's creating a data object. It's clicking the button, then checking the messages there. Great, let's use that. Continue. So it said that it ran the code, and we can see that the results are on screen there. And it says that it's matched the validation criteria. So it did what we asked and it actually executed. Now what I can do here is I can copy that code and I can double check myself by pasting it into the console and running it. And it's valid. So let me just double check, paste the code, run it again, valid. So we have some basic code here generated by the AI tooling, which will automate that application. In fact, let me resize everything a little bit. But really, I don't want to do it for just one string. I want to do it for multiple strings. So let's go back to the AI. So I'm going to ask it to amend the code so that it checks multiple input strings, following the same process of inputting the string, clicking the check input button, then checking that the validation message is valid value. Use the following input strings. Let's see what it does. So I can see now it's got an array of test strings and it's running through and it's creating an array of results. So let's go, let's try it. It's telling me that they're all valid values. which is what it was expecting. And if I run this from the console now, so let me copy it, console, paste, we can see the output there, but also I know it's in a, okay, I paused there because I thought I was going a bit crazy. The code that it showed me that it was going to execute has all this set up and is putting the data into a results array. Then the code that it generated doesn't do that. So I've got slightly different code than I was expecting, because I was expecting for it to track the results. So that's interesting. It's a little bit inconsistent sometimes in terms of what it's shown you it's executed and what it's saying that it ran. I don't actually know if it did run this one. Well, clearly it did run this one because there's the data results. But then it gave me a different code so that I can run it myself. All right, so we've got to keep an eye on what the AI is doing. We might want to copy the code out into different text files and eventually create the proper code that we're going to run ourselves. We know it can automate it. We know it can generate the code, but that's interesting that it told us that it was going to run something, actually ran it, and then gave us different code than what it ran. But we're going to build on this because really what I want is I want more input. I want it to automatically generate the data. I don't want to have to keep feeding it data. So let's automatically generate the data. I'm going to ask it to create code to generate the list of test strings, which cover every combination of 7 character strings, where the characters can be these valid characters. Then check all the input strings, following the same process of inputting the string, clicking the button, and checking the validation is valid value. Now that's quite a lot of combinations. So let's see what it, so it's telling me that's too many combinations. You really don't want to do that. There are 4 trillion different combinations. And then, but it's suggesting what I might want to do. Okay, so let's be a little bit more specific in what we're going to ask it to do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the prompts in this text document so I can track them, make it a little bit easier to see what's going on, and it'll be easier to amend. Okay, so what I'm going to ask it to do this time is create code to generate the list of strings. The strings should be 7 characters long, and each of the valid characters should be used at least once. The valid characters are what we've seen. Then input them, check the results. Let's see what it does with this. Okay, let's see what it thinks it's going to do. So the number of combinations doesn't need to be very large. I wonder what it thinks I've asked for. So it's created a list of all the valid characters. Okay, so it's decided to categorize the character types. It's generating a small sample. I wonder why. It's doing some randomization, string shuffling to make it a bit more random. So let's see. So it's going to generate 10 strings. Okay. Add 1 of each required type. Fill the array with random characters from the full set. Data returned, string length is not defined. Okay, so then clearly it's going to fix its error. All right, so it did run the code. It found an error. Now it's amending the code. So now I have to reread this code again. All right, now this is the hard part of working with the AI stuff. This is going to take me quite a long time to read all the code and understand it and review it before I go on to the next step. So I'm just going to say, yeah, go ahead, do it, and then I'll review it at the end. Okay, so what did it do? Okay, so it's telling me that it generated 10 strings and it's escaping the asterisks because this is markdown, I assume. But it's telling me that this value is incorrect. So let's have a quick look at what that is. So it's got 7 characters. They're all in the input set, check input, invalid value. So that input is triggering one of the bugs in the application. So it's not quite the code that I was looking for. I've not got the coverage that I wanted, but we've got some random generation and we found a bug. So we're getting somewhere. Because it hasn't quite done what I've asked, I'm going to continue and amend the prompt and see what it can do. If I was doing this in the real world, I'd make a note of this input value and put that on the side. In fact, I'd be trying to store all these bits of code and experiment with it, so it would take longer. Because I'm using it to tactically test the application and gain some coverage, I'm not really trying to build code that I can reuse longer term. So I'm letting it generate the code from scratch each time. So let's see if we can get a better set of input. Okay, so now I'm asking it to create code to generate the list of test strings. The test string should be 7 characters long. Generate enough test strings such that each of the valid characters should be used at least once in a generated test string. I'm going to try and force it to go through all the different valid characters. There's the valid characters. Then I'll ask it to check and ensure that we get the values that we're expecting. Let's see what it does with this. Okay, so it's generated some code. I'm just going to run it. Let's see what happens. All right, let's see what it thinks. Now, I understand you want to ensure every character is used at least once across the entire set. It's still important to note that a single 7-character cannot say yes. I've generated a set of 30 test strings. Okay, so this set collectively uses each character from the valid character set. I then tested each of these strings by inputting it. Check the button. All right, so what strings has it generated? Number of strings generated 30, all valid characters. Okay, so it says that all the characters are in there. And then it's gone, 21 of them are valid, 9 are invalid. So again, we've now got more examples of values that triggered invalid values. So we're seeing some patterns in here. If I could choose to stop at this point, just analyze this and see if there's any patterns in the input data. I can see one pattern in there. All of these strings contain the letter A. So to figure out why these are failing, you might want to examine the code. Well, yes, that's the easiest way of doing it if you're a developer. If you're coming at this from a test perspective, you might want to not actually go much further. Just create a defect and say, here are the examples. Create a defect, pass that on to someone else who will do the proper analysis. Analyzing the failing strings to look for common patterns or specific characters. All right, so here's the code. Okay, so we've got some code that is running through and doing all the valid characters. Let's see if it can do this analysis. So I'm just going to actually type in the prompt that it's given me and ask it. Analyze the failing strings. Look for common patterns or specific characters that return invalid value. This might give clues for the validation character. Let's see what it does. Now, I haven't told it which of the failing strings, so I'm assuming that the failing strings are still in its context, in its memory, and that it will be able to work through this. We're also pushing this beyond what you're really supposed to do with the AI assistant, because it's supposed to be working with your actual DOM. So let's have a look. Absence of the asterisk character. Out of the 9, 8 do not contain asterisks. Exception, 1 does. Okay, so it's focusing in on asterisks and digits. Okay, so it's going down a different track than I would go down, because I'm assuming that the letter A is important in here. Let's test that ourselves. It's valid. Let's put in the letter A, check input. It's invalid. So there's something to do with the letter A. That seemed to me clear in that list of data that it gave us, but it hasn't been able to find this out. So I probably wouldn't use this AI for that level of analysis, but clearly I can use it to generate code that will create data and scope of data to help me automate. I just have to get the prompt correct. Now, what I haven't done is look through this to see if there's continued consistency in the code for execution. What we could do is probably expand it to report the data differently, but this is a pretty good result. If you did not know how to automate in the console using JavaScript, you could use the AI assistant to help you do that. You might not understand the code. I understand the code. I can see that it's selecting the elements correctly. It's using a little bit more complicated code than I would. There's only one button on the page, so I could just do input type button, but having it say with the value check input is absolutely fine. It's checking the validation message. We could just use the name, I guess, to find it as well. But it's identifying the right elements. If you were concerned in any way, you could take that input query and you could put it into the DOM view. If I do Control F in here, paste that, there we go, it's found the right field. So I can double check the code that it's got in there. But I understand what this code is because I know how to do this myself and I know how to write JavaScript. If you didn't know how to do this yourself, you would be trusting it. We've already seen that it can take quite a long time to review the code, and there's the risk that the code that it tells you it's executed is different from the code it's suggesting that you execute. So you might then take that code and put it in the console. You might get a different result than it did. You certainly get a different output because it's creating a data object in order to allow it to check the code, but it's not giving you that option here. A change to the prompt might generate that. But if I was trying to learn how to automate in the console, this would be a massive speed boost to that learning process. If you've never automated in the console before and you can create a prompt to create JavaScript that you can put in the console and see results and help you with your testing, then later on analyze that code, that's a phenomenal learning aid. This would massively speed up your learning. So I think this is pretty good. I don't know how long we've spent here. I'll edit the video down, but it's been 25 minutes. I've been experimenting with this. We've got code. We've fed it into the system. We've automated at a high level. We've found inputs that are invalid. I can see now that the A character in certain positions is not being validated properly. So I might want to test that more myself by creating different combinations. I've gained information that I can then use to support my testing. I've got a tactical way of automating. I could go back and use the original version that had the list of strings in the array, create my own test data, so I feed that in. There's a lot of things I can do here to boost my automated execution coverage here at a tactical level. I'm not trying to create code that will last forever. I'm not trying to create code that will automate the browser from the outside in. I'm using it to support my exploratory testing. And this is free. This AI assistance is built into Google Chrome, and it can help us automate coverage in different applications. I think this is really good. Experiment with it. See what you understand. See what you don't. You could use the tool to explain the code itself. You could possibly, if you're not getting the results you want here, or you want multiple windows, put the code into ChatGPT or another tool and ask it to explain the code. But this is a really good start point for automating in the console. I recommend experimenting with it.